Hello everyone, welcome back to my channel Learners Art, where we try to bridge the learning gap that exists between the classroom and outside the classroom. Of course, being a virtual space, it's very important you come to watch some very nice videos that can help you step up your understanding of some linguistic basics and even advanced linguistic discussions. All right, so in case you've not seen my last two previous videos on ellipses, where we did discuss syntactic ellipses and also dialogic ellipses, I'm going to recommend those videos for you. All right, because we've been getting a lot of testimonials how these videos have really helped them or shaped the learner's mind. All right, so today we're looking at the stylistic ellipsis. Remember, in that one of those videos we did mention that there are three categories or three classifications of ellipses. You talk about the dialogic ellipsis, you talk about the syntactic ellipsis, and the last one is a stylistic ellipsis. Now, why is it important to understand these three broad classification of ellipses? For a lot of learners out there, they understand that you've got to see the symbolic representation, you've got to see those three dots to talk about ellipses, but that's not true. You can actually have ellipses being used syntactically, where there's going to be an omission of some grammatical element, maybe verbs are missing, nouns are missing, and you do not really need to denote these symbolically. You do not need to apply those three dots. All right, we've also talked about how you can use ellipses dialogically. All right, in a dialogue you can also use ellipses without a representation of those dots. All right, and that happens when the comment or the response is actually given in an abridged form. All right, all of these actually they're realities, they're actually possible, and I think you watching the video will help you with a more concrete understanding of these two types of ellipses. Now, this is the last type of ellipsis that we're going to be focusing on, and is stylistic ellipsis. Well, someone may also want to know, well, for the stylistic ellipsis, does it have restriction? Well, I can tell you there are no restrictions. All right, that simply means you can use that stylistic ellipsis across the genre. You can use that if you're writing it. If you can do that when you're writing in prose. You can also do that for drama, and it's also important. You can do that also when you're writing a poem. Take for example, when writers actually use ellipses, maybe poets, so to speak, when poets use ellipses when they are composing their poems, all right, or putting their poem together. All right, they do that because they believe it can actually help in deepening the depth of the poem. All right, another thing it does is it can help to engage the reader's mind more in a more meaningful manner. And that tells you when you actually use an ellipsis, it's going to really help learners to be more engaged. It's going to help learners to have a better view, better grasp of the communication in a poem. I think this example on the board might actually make some sense to us. All right. This is an extract from a particular poem. Because I could not stop death. You can see our ellipsis. It kindly stopped for me. All right. So if you look at this ellipsis, this is a poem, like I mentioned, it's an extract of a poem, a line from a poem. All right. So let's look at some of the effects such could actually have. Do not forget that whenever we have ellipses being used in a poem, it conveys several functions. It could also communicate several effects, but these are few of those effects. For example, it could actually enhance the poem's depth, just like I've mentioned, and that's very important. Another thing it does is it improves readers' engagement. I mean, just something I've also mentioned. It serves as a